Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in today's episode of BioWiz podcast, Meet the Weezard. I am Elizabeth, and I am glad to be here today with Christopher Tasker, the CEO of Global Cannabinoid Solution. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Oh, very good morning, Elizabeth. I'm very well, thank you. We've got some typical miserable British weather today, but I see that it's all nice and sunny down in the Mediterranean down there. So yeah, very jealous, but I'm hoping yeah, we can spread some of that sun up to the UK today. But no, thank you for a lovely little introduction there, and very excited to share my perspective with everyone. So thank you so much.
So I would like Chris to start by asking you what we are asking all our guests here. Could you tell us a bit more about your journey and what led you to where you are today?
Absolutely. So I guess I had a bit of a strange, oh, not a strange, a bit of an organic progression into cannabis industry. I was initially doing a medical research degree looking at physiology, therapeutics, medical research into medicines, and something strange caught my eye. I remember not really knowing what direction I wanted to go with the research, but stumbled across cannabidiol in the treatment of the gut. And so I was absolutely determined to go into that field. There was a couple of studies there on like space worms and sending worms into zero gravity. But what I was really excited about was just seeing cannabis, cannabinoids being tested. And I thought it was really interesting. It was very sort of against the grain, quite politically interesting, and also a pretty sort of heated area of discussion. And so I jumped into my first sort of medical research field in the gut. So that was all inflammatory bowel diseases, inflamed colons, and gut disorders. So that was an interesting well, that sort of opened my eyes to all of this cannabinoid medicine, the endocannabinoid system. And that really just sort of blew my mind as to, whoa, there's a whole area of medicine here that modern medicine doesn't acknowledge, doesn't know exists. And here's something that doctors aren't even taught about. So I was just blown away to start with. And then from there, stayed on to do a master's in research as well, looking at colorectal cancer and how cannabinoids can be used in colorectal cancer. And then the link to the endocannabinoid system in cancer as well. So there's some really, I think initially I was excited by the cannabidiol part, but what I'm really sort of excited about now is the endocannabinoid system, how that relates to disease, endocannabinoid system therapies, and ways that we can manipulate the physiology of humans to create therapeutic benefits. And so whilst all that was going on, there was an emergence of patients getting caught in the criminal system, getting caught in, difficult situations where they knew that cannabis had therapeutic properties. The hippies were right in a way, but they never had all this evidence and science behind them to be able to break that down. So I got involved, and I got quite frustrated sitting in the lab, not doing a lot. And so I dragged a few of my friends astray, pulled them into some of these patient conversations, worked with the police to sort of liaise between patients and the police communities as well, because there was a lot of patients, say, growing their own cannabis, people with cancer, army veterans with PTSD. They didn't want to source it from the black market, so they were growing their own. And so the police were spending like 20, 30,000 pounds organizing a raid to kick down that person's door and further traumatizing that person. So we've had people with brain tumors going through the criminal system, veterans with PTSD, incredibly disabled people, missing arms, limbs, legs, whatever it be, all getting dragged through the criminal system because of, well, our sort of outdated cannabis laws. It's still looked at very much through the lens of prohibition and illegal and illegal. We have that sort of binary perspective and don't really look holistically as a society at what the evidence says and what the science says, really. And so that sort of snowballed. And so around 2018, the CBD industry sort of popped up in the UK. And I say industry because it's not so complex at the moment. It's still just a lot of CBD brands set up a website, do some e-commerce. There's a couple of clinics that have popped up. There's a few early production facilities that have popped up, but the industry is still very much in its infancy. And so I saw, and my colleagues and I all saw, a great opportunity to support this emerging ecosystem with our backgrounds in research. I'd like to give a little shout out to some of the cannabis communities that are out there, the cannabis cooperatives, cannabis clubs. That's really where all of this cannabis industry started, and it'd be lovely to see a lot more cannabis companies and newcomers to the cannabis industry engage with those communities, engage with those clubs.
Could you describe it for us exactly to understand the dynamic within the cannabis industry today?
Oh, my pleasure. So the way I've seen it over this last couple of years and how it's evolved is that there was very much a scientific bubble, there was very much a societal bubble, and then there's this new industry bubble that's emerged. We've been trying to do our best to sort of intertwine those three areas and sort of create a focal point where you can share the unique perspectives from society, you can bring in the scientific perspectives, and you can bring in the industry perspectives. And that's really what we've tried to incubate with Global Cannabinoid Solutions. As an industry and as an ecosystem, there's a lot of disconnection at the moment, and there's a lot of opportunity within those connections and within bringing all those people together. And there's a lot of complementary strengths and unique offerings and unique ways that people look at the world, look at cannabis, look at the industry. And so what we enjoy doing is working with those people, helping them develop out their ideas and really shape society as best we can, but using industry as more of a vehicle for social good. Don't get me wrong, industries can make money. There's very sort of socially thoughtful and impactful ways of doing business, and that's what we've tried to encourage amongst our ecosystem as well, is that there's communities out there that need your help, want your help, and want to help you and want to start these conversations. So it's really just sort of breaking down those barriers and using, I guess, the science as that common language between people. That's really been the glue to a lot of the conversations that we've had, and it makes sure that everyone's speaking the same language. It keeps everyone on the same page, and it makes the conversation a lot clearer when you've got sort of science to navigate some of those unknowns and break down some of the misconceptions and misinterpretations as well. So the ecosystem is very much alive. It is constantly, it's a living organism.
I'm only guessing all the struggles and challenges that you have on the way, and especially when it comes to international regulations that you were mentioning also earlier. Could you tell us a bit more about that? How does it look today?
It's not necessarily the culture, but more the legislative frameworks that I've seen that have a greater impact on business and I guess politics behind it as well. I think on the whole, culturally, it's a melting pot. I don't see it as sort of strictly segregated or as sort of separated out as I guess the world has been. But again, through the internet, through this sharing of perspectives, like this podcast, there's really been a wonderful sort of international ecosystem that's evolved as well. And so it's interesting seeing all these mini ecosystems building into a big global ecosystem. And again, sort of culturally speaking, I think cannabis provides a sort of common language for a lot of people. I couldn't name some of the countries even that I've had conversations with people about cannabis and how easily we've got along because, we've got cannabis in common and we enjoy talking about it. Or I'll speak with a scientist from Tel Aviv or wherever it be. And we'll just get along because of, I guess, that sort of shared passion for cannabis science, the medicine, and that excitement, I guess, is quite commonly shared amongst people in the industry. But I think culturally we've got it. It's been a tough year for everyone being locked inside with COVID, and I think everyone's really sort of flourished over this last year. It's given everyone an opportunity to go back to the drawing board, have a big rethink, have lots more conversations, just slow down a bit. And I think coming into this new year, as the sort of world reopens again, I'm really excited to see all of the community, the collaboration, the meetings, the roundtables, the conferences. 'Cause it, offers a whole, again, world of sort of opportunity and just different ways of exciting the brain, triggering different ideas, new thoughts and perspectives. And it's a wonderful place to be honest. Don't get me wrong, there's some politics within the cannabis ecosystem, and there's a lot of money moving around. And so when you've got lots of money moving around, there's emotions fly and tensions rise between groups, and competition's a natural thing. But on the whole, I see lots of unity. I see everything's progressing, don't get me wrong. But I would love to see the pure industry and the newcomers blend a lot more with the patients and the communities that have been doing this for the last 10, 20 years, because there's so much that can be learned by the industry as well, just from those grassroots frontline perspectives. And that's sadly something that's quite badly overlooked at the moment. And particularly, say, patients getting caught in the criminal system, that's still a problem. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'd probably like to see a bit more of a focus on patients this year, and citizens and the population who are still criminalized in the UK by the cannabis laws. And so we've made progress, but it's not quite enough, and there's still a lot of problems there to be solved. So it's looking good.
What are your biggest challenges today?
I think, well, the classic one of stigma, Elizabeth, is always a fun one to navigate. And not everyone is able to change their mind. I've found lots of people, they've made the decision, they're never going to change their mind. And challenge-wise, that's probably the biggest, is just approaching newcomers, some people who haven't heard of cannabis, and breaking down some of the misconceptions on cannabis. One other area, I guess the generational divide. I'm fairly young, but there's a lot of 50, 60, 70-year-olds in the cannabis industry, which quite shocked me. I thought there'd be, a lot more young people. And don't get me wrong, there's some wonderful young entrepreneurs as well that we've had the pleasure of connecting with. But I do very much see a generational divide in, again, the sort of, I guess that's more of the cultural divide, is say 20 to 30-year-olds and 50 to 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds. I always see a lot of sort of friction between the two groups, and it's a whole different world of ideas, I suppose, going from very conservative, well, this is how it works, this is how it's always worked, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. A lot of younger entrepreneurs just want to try everything. They've got all these ideas, the internet's out there, and we've all grown up with the internet at our fingertips, so we know we've got a lot more digital tools, I guess, to play with. And there's, again, a whole new realm of perspectives to be intertwined intergenerationally as well. So there's there's a lot of connection that needs to be made still, and it is it's all disjointed. All the puzzle pieces are there, but I think as a whole, this year has given everyone an opportunity to sort of sit back and see what the lay of the land is, take a big picture view, and reanalyze, reassess, and come back this year to create something new that works for everyone and is sustainable and solves problems as well. So it's been interesting, Elizabeth. I can't lie, but it's a wonderful place to be working, and lots to do. So
you're mentioning a lot the internet. I'm curious to understand if you could give me some concrete example on how the internet has an impact on all those struggles and challenges.
I think it speeds everything up a lot more. For example, I can wake up on a morning, I have an idea, I can text someone on the other side of the world and say, hey, what do you think? 20 years ago, that maybe wasn't such a easy thing to do. Whereas now you can have international conversations all from your mobile phone, and you don't even have to get out of bed. Sometimes it's kind of risky and kind of scary, but a nice tool to have. And I think that, like, the internet's just being a pace of communication, should I say, Elizabeth, is what has really astounded me, and the reach that you can have just with an internet connection, a laptop. You can be speaking with people in Israel, you can be speaking with people in South America, Australia. And so,
So
I
that would
think
be
that's
more on
probably
the
been the
aspect of,
biggest.
so that would be more on the aspect of connecting brains together and have new ideas of projects and proposals to be, and how does it work on the side of the regulation? Do you also use
A bit
this
like
tool?
BioWeez.
Yeah, kind of. Do you also use the tool as to be able to propose those new ideas, to make things change when it comes to regulation and to things that are forbidden and changes that are expected? Do you also observe something on this aspect?
I think in some senses that communication can be really useful if you know who to communicate with, but it can also be really confusing when there are so many messages going around, there's so many conversations happening. And I do see, like, that's sort of what it's a role that we've taken on that we didn't necessarily want. There's a lot of people that come to us and say, well, look, is what I'm doing illegal? Is this legal? What are the regulations? I'm not so much a scientist. We've got legal people that help with that. I would say I'm not so much a lawyer. I'm a scientist, and we've got people that deal with that. Sorry. But I know for a fact one of the biggest challenges, like, it comes with its pros and cons. I'm very fortunate, and I can I've got a background in the area. I know the science, so that can help me navigate what's real, what's not. But for a lot of people, they don't have that background, and so that's where that's our value to the industry, is that we can help people navigate that space. And, well, look, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, this is what's realistic, this is what's scientifically sort of impossible. And so it's an interesting point that you raised, though. And like, in the internet and communication have been a super tool, but it's also a super weapon. It can be used for misinformation. It can be used to perpetuate confusion and muddy the waters. That's why we've set up, is really just to help people navigate that, because it is really hard to separate fact from fiction in this modern world. There's so much information out there. It's really hard to decide what to trust, what not to trust, what's real, what's not. And so that's why we like to think people turn to a scientist, is because they can separate a bit better from what's like fact from fiction and myth from medicine, in a way. And so and it gives you a sort of anchor point. And so from there, we've been really lucky in that we've pulled together now lots of anchor points, lots of different knowledge, and we're now able to apply that and work with people on ways that they can implement that, how they can leverage the science and what they can really do with their business. Because, again, there's a lot of people that have great ideas but don't know how to develop them. And so, again, that's how we can sort of help people. And that's what we enjoy doing most, is really just solving problems. And I think that's really the role of scientists in the industry, is to solve societal problems rather than prey on society, which, again, is something that industries can do and have done. But what we'd like to do for the 21st century is make industries that help society and improve society, rather than sort of hold them back and prey on them. And so we've got a lot of vulnerable people in the cannabis industry and the ecosystem in the communities. And there's so much good that can be done as a business for society. You can still run a wonderful business, but it's so much more satisfying when you're helping a whole community of people with your business too. So that's really what we're trying to encourage. And I guess, again, like, those are just some of the more prevalent challenges, should I say. There's a lot of people in pain. There's a lot of people that are upset. There's a lot of people that are struggling financially because cannabis medicines, or they've had run-ins with the police and the police have seized their funds or taken their house, whatever it be. There's a lot of pain, upset and hurting people. And again, there's a big role for the industry to play in supporting those people who, again, typically patients getting caught in the criminal system and they're being treated like criminals, like you would a sort of mafia member or a gangster. They're treating patients like that too.
That's a beautiful goal, the desire to do good while doing business, and to always remind ourselves that when you're working on these kind of projects, you have patients on the other side that are waiting for this help. So we are really looking forward to see where this industry is going and how you will be part of companies helping this become a strong reality and overcome all the challenges. So what are the next steps when it comes to the development of the cannabis industry?
So for this next year and couple of years ahead, I think there's going to be a massive perspective switch towards patients again. This last 2 years been very much product focused. And I think this next couple of years is going to be more people focused. And again, trying to understand those perspectives, understand the market perspective as well, not just what businesses say, but what consumers say and what consumers want too. Secondly, the endocannabinoid system is what I think is going to emerge as the real heavyweight in cannabis. Cannabis is cool. Cannabis works. It's a great medical drug plant. But what cannabis has really done is help us unveil the endocannabinoid system and understand a whole new piece of human physiology that no one's explored yet. And so the way I describe this is like having a blood industry without understanding the cardiovascular system, or the equivalent of having an insulin industry without knowing that the pancreas exists. And so that's really where we're at with cannabis, is that we know that we've got cannabis, but we don't know that the endocannabinoid system really exists. And it does 100% exist. It's just hasn't really gained the same traction as CBD has or cannabis. It's not as easy to wrap your head around, but at the same time is pretty easy to understand. And so I think really that's what businesses are missing out on at the moment, is those community perspectives and sort of real world patient perspectives, consumer perspectives, but also really not factoring in the endocannabinoid system, the whole basis of physiology behind why we use cannabis. And I think probably thirdly, integrating more science into the conversations. When I get into some companies and I hear the conversations they're having, they're on a different planet. They are so far away from, they don't know what's real and what's not. And so they're going off of information that's come secondhand from someone else. And so sometimes these misunderstandings and myths just spiral out of control. And so there's a whole world of advantage that can be gained from listening to scientists and letting them break down your business and share their perspectives, because they've got incredible knowledge in this area, and there's a whole lot of innovation, there's a whole lot of opportunity and a whole lot of technology that's out there that most people don't know about, that a scientist can bring to the conversation. The scientist knows how it works, how it can be benefited, and it's all about innovation, moving things forward. And I think that's the big role that scientists have to play in this industry, is helping the industry develop, helping the industry mature and innovate and create solutions as well. So there's a wonderful pool of knowledge out there to be tapped into. And it's, yeah, I think once all of this fundraising and all of these product sales get out the way, which seems to have happened over the last year, there's a far more meaningful conversation to be had around humans, people, and their relationship with cannabis, rather than this obsessive focus on CBD particularly, because it just means that we overlook everything else, and CBD is just one of 1,000 molecules in cannabis. So there's no reason to be focusing on CBD. There's so much more out there that everyone's missing out on. And I'd say don't follow the trends, don't follow the bandwagons, create your own trend, create your own area, because we're 2 years into the industry. If you know what you're doing, there's over these next 10 years, there's so much that can be built, created, and problems solved. So yeah, I'd highly encourage anyone to adopt more scientists. We've got a whole firm of scientists. BioWeez has a whole network and realm of scientists. Like, they're all out there. Tap into them and make as much use of them as you can.
You wanted to discuss about one great organization that you wanted to put under the spotlight that is also raising awareness and helping the others. So could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes. So a lot of patients are being slowly bankrupted by private prescription costs. So these in the UK can be anywhere from a minimum of 500 to 800 a month up to £3,000 plus per month, which isn't necessarily sustainable for the majority of the UK population. And so there's a lot of people with, well, there's a particular group of families with children with epilepsy who were the first patients to receive, and this was basically the reason that the cannabis laws in the UK changed. Their prescription costs are astronomical, and if they can't afford those prescription costs, their kids go back to having 300 seizures a day, 18,000 seizures a month. They are in a constant state of seizure without these medicines. And so in the UK, 3 families have their prescriptions paid for, but the other 80, 100,000 of patients out there, they have to pay for their own. And so some of these families are having to auction off their houses, sell their houses, sell family heirlooms, sell jewelry, anything they can to pay for these prescription costs so that their child doesn't have to go back to 18,000 seizures a month and have zero quality of life. So some of these families have put together a charitable organization called InterIntractable. So that's intractable.org.uk. There you can support these families with some donations, help them massively by not having this huge financial burden over them, as well as having to be a caregiver for their family members every day of their lives. And some of these families have had kids and family members like this for 20, 30 years. And imagine having to care for someone every day who could potentially just die at any moment from a seizure. Mm-hmm. And so we're really trying to raise awareness for that at the moment. There's a lot of, there's so many incredible medical areas where cannabis is helpful, but this one in particular, there's a lot of families that just can't afford these prescription costs. And so I'd love anyone who can donate even a small amount to this charity. It will be a huge benefit for them. And it means that, yeah, these kids aren't having seizures anymore. They can have a quality of life where they can get out of bed, they can run around and enjoy themselves and begin to recover and live a life. And so, yeah, anyone that's interested in supporting that can do at intractable.org.uk. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Chris, for sharing it.
No, pleasure. And yeah, we've got a cool newsletter. BioWeez do lots of wonderful work as well. So yeah, be sure to follow everyone. And thank you so much for having me, Elizabeth.